In a time long before the rise of the Empire in the outer rim of the galaxy, a child was born beneath the twin suns of Harun Kal, a wild and untamed jungle world cloaked in mystery. His name was Mace Windu. From the moment of his birth, the Force stirred around him. Orphaned as an infant, Mace was brought to the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. He was just 6 standard months old when he first arrived, swaddled in silence and watched over by the serene masters of the Jedi Order. The temple, towering and peaceful, became his home. Even as a youngling, Mace was different, calm, thoughtful, and intense. He saw patterns in the Force that others did not. He was known for his discipline and for his questions, always seeking a deeper understanding of the Jedi Code. As he grew, so too did his connection to the Force. It flowed through him like a quiet stream in a still forest. At the age of 14, Mace began his Padawan training under Jedi Master Sislin Mir, a wise and patient teacher. Together, they journeyed across the galaxy on missions of peace and diplomacy. It was during this time that Mace first saw the chaos of war and the complexity of choices that did not always have simple answers. Unlike many Jedi, Mace did not fear the dark side. He studied it, understood it, and built a discipline to walk near its edge without falling. From this came his own lightsaber form, Vapad, a style that channeled inner darkness, aggression, and combat focus into light. He was elegant, fast, and dangerous. Only Mace Windu could master it fully. As the years passed, Mace became a Jedi Knight and then a Jedi Master. His skill with a lightsaber was unmatched, and his clarity of mind revered. He eventually rose to become a leading member of the Jedi High Council, second only to Master Yoda in influence. Mace believed deeply in the Jedi Code. He sought order, justice, and clarity. But the galaxy around him was changing. Shadows were growing. During the last years of the Republic, war erupted. The Clone Wars. Jedi were forced into roles as generals. Mace, though uncomfortable with this path, led with honor. He fought in many battles, including the Siege of Rylith and the Battle of Dantooine. Always, he sought peace. In the shadows of Coruscant, however, the true enemy remained hidden. Darth Sidious, Chancellor Palpatine, manipulated events from behind a mask of civility. Mace grew suspicious. The dark side clouded everything. At last, the truth was revealed. Palpatine was the Sith Lord they had searched for. In the stillness of a rainy Coruscant night, Mace confronted him. He brought with him Jedi Masters Kit Fisto, Agan Kolar, and Saesee Tiin. One by one, they fell to Sidious's blade. Only Mace remained. In a stunning duel, Mace Windu disarmed the Sith Lord, holding his purple-bladed lightsaber steady as lightning crackled across the Chancellor's face. "You are under arrest," he said. But then came Anakin Skywalker, troubled, conflicted, desperate to save the ones he loved. In a single, fateful moment, Anakin betrayed the Jedi. Mace was struck down. He fell out the window, into the night, into legend. His body was never recovered. Some believe he died that day. Others whisper that he survived. But wherever he is, Mace Windu's legacy endures. He was a guardian of peace, a master of the Force, and a warrior of unshakable resolve. His story reminds us that even in times of darkness, discipline, clarity, and inner balance can be a light. And so, beneath the stars of a galaxy far, far away, Mace Windu sleeps. May the Force be with him and with you. Long before he stood among the most respected Jedi in the galaxy, Mace Windu was a quiet child with curious eyes and a strong will, born into hardship on the wild world of Harun Kal. Harun Kal was not like the shining city planet of Coruscant. It was untamed, fierce, a place of dense jungles, roaring winds, and an ever-present struggle for survival. The Korunai people, Mace's people, were force-sensitive warriors, guardians of their land, but even among them, Mace was unique. His parents perished while he was still an infant. Some say it was during a tribal skirmish. Others say it was nature itself that claimed them. Whatever the truth, the Force had already chosen another path for the orphaned boy. At just 6 standard months old, Mace Windu was taken by Jedi scouts to the temple on Coruscant. It was the tradition of the Jedi to identify Force-sensitive children early. The temple, ancient and serene, welcomed him like it did so many others. But Mace, young as he was, felt a deep loss, a disconnection from the roots he would never truly know. Even in the nursery halls of the temple, the masters noticed him, the way he focused so intently, the way he seemed to listen to the Force itself. He was quiet, but not passive, thoughtful, but never hesitant. While other younglings laughed and played freely, Mace was often meditating, asking questions of the universe, even before he could form the words. He was assigned to the Dragon Clan, one of many groups of younglings trained in unity. There, he learned the basics of the Jedi Code, lightsaber drills with training sabers, and the peaceful philosophy of the Order. Still, the masters could sense in him something unusual. He struggled at times, not with combat nor focus, but with acceptance. He longed for structure, for purpose. He was fascinated with the Force, especially its more elusive aspects. He wanted to understand the why, not just the how. At the age of 14, after excelling beyond his peers in lightsaber training and philosophy, Mace was selected by Jedi Master Sislin Mir. She was a Mirialan Jedi, wise and patient, who sensed that beneath Mace's discipline was a storm of motion, a fire that needed focus. With Master Mir, Mace traveled far from Coruscant. Their early missions took them to frontier worlds where diplomacy was fragile. One mission brought them to the icy plains of Maigito, where a civil war threatened to erupt. Mace learned there that peace was not always clean and justice not always clear. But through it all, he held fast to the Jedi Code. He crafted his first lightsaber after vision. Unlike most Jedi whose sabers shone blue or green, Mace's crystal, found during a solitary trial on the planet Hurricane, produced a deep violet blade, a rare color, one not seen in generations. It reflected who he was, balanced between light and shadow, strength and serenity. Even as a Padawan, he showed rare insight. He understood how close the Jedi must tread to the edge of darkness to defeat it, but also how dangerous that edge could be. This inner awareness would later form the basis of Form 7, Va-Pad, a lightsaber style that embraced aggression yet demanded absolute control. He struggled too. He was not immune to fear or doubt. But he learned to master them, not through denial, but through deep meditation, discipline, and resolve. When he finally passed the trials and became a Jedi Knight, the Council took special notice. Yoda himself once remarked that Mace saw shatter points in the Force, fractures in fate, moments of tension that could determine entire futures. It was a rare ability and a heavy responsibility. But for now, the boy from Harun Kal, once alone, once lost, had found his path. A Jedi, a guardian, a servant of peace. And his story was only just beginning. As the Republic basked in an age of relative peace, the Jedi Knights roamed the galaxy, guardians of balance, mediators of conflict, protectors of the innocent. Among them stood Mace Windu, now a Jedi Knight. He had passed the Jedi trials with calm precision and unwavering discipline. The lessons of his youth, of struggle, solitude, and stillness had become his strength. With his amethyst blade, he journeyed far from the temple, embracing the life of a Jedi with quiet purpose. The galaxy was vast, a sea of stars and countless systems, each with their own joy and their own troubles. Mace traveled to them not with a warrior's pride, but with a listener's heart. He mediated water disputes on the dusty world of Jakelia, resolved trade wars on Selvaris. On Dantooine, he stood between two tribes whose blood feud had lasted centuries, and convinced them to lay down their arms with nothing more than truth, patience, and the will of the Force. But not all missions ended in peace. On a distant planet called Hurricane, Mace was sent to investigate reports of violence. The native crystalline beings saw him as a threat. He was attacked, hurt, but instead of retaliating, Mace extended his hand. In doing so, he won their trust, and from them he received a gift, a rare kyber crystal, deep violet and filled with resonance. It would later form the heart of his legendary purple-bladed lightsaber. Mace Windu was not without struggle. The Jedi way demanded the letting go of attachment, but Mace cared deeply for those he served. He often wondered, how can one protect without connection? How can one care and yet remain detached? These were questions that shaped him, not as weaknesses, but as truths he wrestled with in meditation and in battle. He trained under great masters, and then, in time, began to train others. He studied lightsaber forms with intensity. While many chose the elegant Form 2 or the balanced Form 4, Mace sought something deeper. He explored Form 7, a style thought too dangerous by many, a form that flirted with aggression and edge. Through focus and self-discipline, he transformed it. He created Vapad, a form that allowed a Jedi to channel the darkness around them, but never submit to it. Only a few could use it safely. Mace was the only one who ever mastered it fully. It was during this time that he began to foresee ripples in the Force, quiet disturbances, shadows that didn't move like normal. The peace of the Republic, while beautiful, was beginning to fray at its edges. His clarity and resolve earned him a seat on the Jedi High Council even before his 40th year, a rare honor. He sat alongside Jedi like Ki-Adi-Mundi, Plo Koon, and the ancient Master Yoda. Mace brought to the council not only wisdom and power, but a strong sense of order. He believed that the Jedi should act with firm conviction, guided by the code and not by the shifting winds of politics. He was never unkind, but he could be stern, never cruel, but unflinching. He carried the heavy burden of leadership with poise, always seeking truth, even when it was uncomfortable. And so, Mace Windu stood at the peak of Jedi excellence, a master of the blade, a master of the self, a voice of clarity in a galaxy growing dimmer by the day. But even he, with all his insight and strength, could not yet see the storm that approached. In the calm before the Clone Wars, the Jedi Order stood on the edge of change, and Mace Windu, guardian of balance, watcher of shadows, remained ever vigilant, waiting, listening, guided by the Force. The stars, once peaceful, began to flicker under the weight of fear. Whispers of war spread across the galaxy, systems seceding, worlds choosing sides, a movement that began as political protest, twisted into something darker, and at the center of it all, the Jedi. They had once been guardians of peace. Now, they were asked to become generals. Mace Windu did not seek war. He had devoted his life to avoiding conflict. But as the Clone Wars ignited across 1,000 worlds, he knew the Jedi could not stand aside. Peace sometimes had to be defended with a lightsaber. He stepped into this role with quiet reluctance, leading Republic forces not out of pride, but out of duty. With the Grand Army of the Republic, millions of clone soldiers bred for battle, he fought on many fronts. On Ryloth, he freed the Twi'lek people from occupation, walking side by side with their leaders. On Dantooine, he led a fierce counter-assault that held the line against overwhelming odds. On Geonosis, he had stood among the first to ignite his blade in full-scale combat, leading Jedi into battle against the Separatist droid army. But each battle left a mark. Mace could feel the toll war took, not just on the Republic, but on the Jedi themselves. Once guardians of balance, they now commanded troops, plotted strategy, and made decisions that cost thousands of lives. It disturbed him. In the quiet of the temple, he often sat alone in meditation. "The Force is clouded," he whispered. "Shadows deepen. There was a presence in the galaxy, a hidden hand moving events from behind the curtain." Mace began to sense it, though he could not see its face. He watched Chancellor Palpatine grow in power, granted emergency authority, then more and more again, always for the sake of security. Mace did not trust him. He believed in the Republic, but began to doubt its leadership. He believed in the Jedi, but worried they were being drawn away from their true path. When Anakin Skywalker, a powerful young Jedi Knight, grew closer to the Chancellor, Mace grew wary. He sensed in Anakin a storm of emotion, potential for greatness, but also for darkness. Mace never hated Anakin, but he did not fully trust him. And yet, he fought beside him again and again through battles, betrayals, and victories that blurred the lines between light and dark. As the war dragged on, Mace found himself forced to make impossible decisions. He ordered strikes that ended conflicts but took lives. He stood before Senate committees, questioning the Republic's direction. He tried, in his own quiet way, to hold the center, to keep the Jedi grounded in the Force, even as the galaxy spun out of balance. He kept himself steady through it all. But even Mace Windu, with all his clarity, could not escape the creeping sense of inevitability. The Force trembled. A reckoning was coming, and Mace knew. The Jedi would not be able to stop it through strength alone. They would need wisdom, resolve, and sacrifice. To many across the galaxy, Mace Windu was known as a warrior, a leader, a voice of strength within the Jedi Council. But to those within the Order, he was something more, and sometimes something harder to understand. Mace Windu held himself to the highest standards. Discipline, clarity, control, these were not words he simply believed in. They were how he lived, and so he asked the same of others. To the Jedi Masters who sat beside him on the High Council, he was deeply respected, sometimes even feared. His insights were sharp, his questions direct, his decisions rarely shaken. Yet within the quiet of the council chamber, he worked closely with Master Yoda, trusting in Yoda's ancient wisdom. The two disagreed at times, but their bond ran deep, rooted in shared purpose. With Obi-Wan Kenobi, Mace shared a mutual respect. Obi-Wan's calm demeanor and humility earned Mace's trust. While they were not close friends, they often saw the world in similar ways, through the lens of duty and restraint. When Obi-Wan was sent to face General Grievous, it was Mace who endorsed the mission. A silent gesture of confidence. But not all relationships came easily to him. With Anakin Skywalker, there was tension. Mace sensed great power in the young knight, but also danger. Anakin's emotions ran hot. His attachments, his pride, his impatience, these troubled Mace deeply. Though he never sought to humiliate Anakin, he often held him at a distance. He did not do this out of cruelty. He did it out of caution. When Anakin asked to be made a Jedi Master upon joining the Council, Mace denied him. "You are on this council," he said, "but we do not grant you the rank of Master." It was not meant as an insult, but as a message. Trust must be earned, not demanded. And yet, perhaps if Mace had reached out, softened his edge, offered more guidance, perhaps things could have been different. With other Jedi, Mace was a pillar of structure. To Kit Fisto, the cheerful Nautolan master, Mace offered tactical respect, often placing him in key roles during war councils. With Depa Billaba, his former Padawan, he shared a close and complex bond. She had once followed him into battle, but during the war, she broke. Driven to madness by the horrors she witnessed, Depa fell into a coma. This haunted Mace deeply. He never spoke of it often, but in his private reflections he asked himself if his strict teachings had pushed her too far, if his belief in the path of the Jedi had blinded him to her pain. For all his discipline, Mace Windu did care. He simply struggled to show it. He believed that Jedi must be guardians, not friends, that to love too freely was to risk the fall. Still, in small ways, he showed his compassion, a patient correction during lightsaber training, a quiet word of encouragement after mission, a steady presence in moments of fear. He carried the weight of leadership with such intensity that few ever saw beyond the armor. But beneath that armor was a man who had given everything to the Jedi, to protect others, to hold the line, to do what was right, even when it cost him connection, warmth, even trust. And in the end, when he stood alone in front of Darth Sidious, betrayed by the very Jedi he had kept at arm's length, he met his fate not with anger, but with acceptance. Because that was who Mace Windu was, a Jedi, a sentinel, and perhaps a man who gave so much of himself to the galaxy that there was little left to give to himself. Mace Windu had always been cautious, not out of fear, but out of clarity. He understood that power, true power, was rarely loud. It whispered, it crept, it offered comfort before it demanded obedience. In his meditations, he often reflected on how quickly justice could become control and how righteousness, when left unchecked, could harden into tyranny. It was this awareness, this sober, unflinching clarity that shaped Mace's relationship with the galaxy's highest office, and with the man who held it, Chancellor Palpatine. From the beginning, Mace watched him, not with open hostility nor even suspicion, but with an alert, measured care. Palpatine had come to power during a time of confusion and uncertainty. A senator from Naboo, soft-spoken and unassuming, he rose swiftly through the ranks of the Republic. He smiled often, spoke in calm tones, and never seemed to lose control. To many, He was the image of civility and reason, a man who could hold the center while others argued at the edges. He praised the Jedi Order in public. He requested their presence at state functions. He even visited the Jedi Temple on ceremonial days, walking among the great halls with respectful awe. When war began to rumble on distant worlds, he turned to the Jedi for counsel, for wisdom, for leadership. And yet, to Mace Windu, something was off. The Chancellor's aura, if one could feel such a thing through the Force, was oddly insulated. There was no obvious malice, no sharp edge of anger. But there was a stillness, a weight, that didn't move with the light. Mace often described it in his mind like the calm before a sandstorm. You don't see it, you don't hear it, but something in your bones knows it's coming. It wasn't proof. It wasn't even accusation. But it was enough to make Mace observe more closely. As the Clone Wars ignited and swept across the galaxy, Palpatine's role expanded. The Republic Senate, eager for order amid chaos, granted him emergency powers. First for a single rotation, then for a cycle, then indefinitely. "We must act swiftly," Palpatine would say, "for the safety of the Republic." Some Jedi, especially the younger ones, took no issue with it. The Republic needed stability. The Jedi were defenders of the peace, and the Chancellor was simply trying to preserve it. But Mace, he remembered old teachings, warnings about how the dark side didn't always come with red sabers and shouted threats. Sometimes it came dressed in law, with perfect diction and noble intentions. He began to voice concerns within the council chambers. "The more comfortable we become with this arrangement," he said quietly, "the harder it will be to return to the way things were." Some agreed. Others urged patience. But Mace did not believe in blind trust. Every war council, every military campaign, every hollow Senate cheer wore on him. Every Jedi lost on distant battlefields weighed on his soul. These were not what the Jedi were meant to be. They had once served the Force itself, not governments, not armies. In the quiet of his quarters, Mace would sit cross-legged for hours, searching the currents of the Force. He tried to find peace, but found only clouded echoes. Something or someone was clouding everything. He began to ask the questions no one wanted to say aloud. What if the Republic we swore to protect had already fallen? What if the Sith never needed to conquer the Jedi because they had already placed themselves at the very heart of power? Among the Jedi, Mace stood firm. Where Yoda brought patience and quiet wisdom, Mace brought structure and unyielding purpose. He did not see himself as infallible, but he knew someone needed to speak plainly to hold the line while others meditated on theory. He did not reject the order. He loved it so deeply, in fact, that he feared it had lost its way. The Jedi Temple had once resonated with balance, with purpose, with stillness. Now it echoed with military updates, political strategy, and silent tension. And yet, he stayed. He served, not to preserve the image of the Jedi, but the truth of them, the light beneath the robes, the duty behind the discipline. And then the truth came. Anakin Skywalker, conflicted, raw, and shaking, revealed what Mace had long feared. Chancellor Palpatine was the Sith Lord they had been searching for. Darth Sidious, the puppet master behind the war, the storm behind the silence. Mace did not hesitate. He gathered his most trusted Jedi and moved to arrest the Chancellor, not with vengeance, but with duty, with sorrow. He had hoped, truly hoped, that he was wrong. But the moment they entered the office, the illusion shattered. Palpatine drew his red lightsaber, and in a blur of motion, he struck down 3 Jedi Masters in seconds. Only Mace remained. They fought, blade against blade, purple light against crimson flame. There is a story few Jedi ever speak aloud, a story about what it means to truly walk the edge, to hear the dark side whisper and not answer its call. This is the story of Mace Windu, the only Jedi Master who studied the storm of the dark and returned untouched. Long before the Clone Wars, long before the Council, Mace Windu felt the Force differently than others. Even as a Padawan, he sensed not only its warmth and serenity, but also the turbulence beneath it. He described it once as a wound in the wind, an undercurrent of raw power that pulsed beneath the surface of reality. Most Jedi turned away from this feeling. They feared it. But Mace didn't. He was not drawn to it in hunger. He was drawn to it in curiosity. To understand the darkness, he believed, was not to embrace it, but to guard against it more completely. He sought not the dark side's strength, but its pattern, its logic. If it could tempt, then it could be tracked. If it could corrupt, then it could be contained. His journey began during his knighthood. In a remote system near the deep core, Mace undertook a solo mission to Hurricane, a shattered planet with jagged cliffs and crystalline life forms. There, in isolation, he faced his own anger for the first time, his failure, his fear. In that crucible, he did not run from those feelings. He faced them, and through them, he saw a path. He meditated not to banish emotion, but to transform it. And from this trial, Mace Windu began to develop something ancient and dangerously rare, a new form of lightsaber combat, one that channeled emotion into motion. Vapad. It was unlike the other 7 forms. Where Form I was simple, Form 3 defensive, and Form Vi aggressive, Vapad was a mirror. It drew in the darkness of an opponent, their rage, their hate, and sent it back at them without letting it touch the Jedi soul. Only Mace could walk this line fully, because he did not deny the presence of darkness within himself. He simply never let it lead. It was a discipline of absolute control. One misstep, and the user would fall. But Mace's control was legendary. He did not suppress his emotions. He channeled them like a river guided by rock. Other Jedi feared Vapad. Some even called it heresy. But Yoda understood. He watched Mace closely, and he saw what few others could, that this Jedi was not falling. He was rising, because he had learned to walk through the storm and emerge in stillness. In war, Mace used this power with great care. On the battlefield, he could deflect blaster fire with uncanny rhythm, move through ranks of droids like a current through stone. His opponents felt not just skill, but presence, as if the Force itself had turned to face them. And yet, Mace never glorified combat. To him, every battle was a failure apiece. Every enemy struck down was a soul lost to the current he had chosen to resist. He believed that Jedi should be fierce only in the defense of others. That understanding the dark side gave you the wisdom to protect, not to dominate. He often meditated on a single truth. Light without understanding is blindness. Darkness without mastery is surrender. But through balance, the Force becomes clear. Few Jedi ever dared walk so close to the edge. Fewer still came back, but Mace Windu did. And because he did, the Order stood stronger, if only for a time. Not every Jedi can become a teacher of darkness, but Mace Windu became its student, and never its servant. If the Force could speak, if it could form a voice from the ancient winds of 1,000 worlds, if it could sing in the language of stars and falling leaves, it would tell the story of Mace Windu. It would not speak his name with mourning. It would not lower its tone in sorrow, because Mace Windu's fall was not a tragedy. It was a moment of truth, a moment when clarity stood alone against a galaxy grown blind, for the Force is not bound by time. It does not remember as we do, with pages and fading memories. The Force sees all at once, every breath ever taken, every blade ignited in fear or in peace. It sees the first life that emerged from a sun-swept ocean, and the last whisper of a dying Jedi in a silent chamber. To the Force, all things are present, and within its eternal flow, Mace Windu moved like a quiet storm, not brash, not boastful, but steady, like the mountain that endures 1,000 winters and still remains. The Force had known him from the very beginning, from his first breath on the wild world of Harun Kal, when the winds wrapped his orphaned soul in solitude and strength. It watched him sleep as a child beneath the towering trees of the temple, hands folded, brow furrowed in quiet thought. Even then, he listened, not just to voices, but to silence. He felt the Force not only in the light, but in the shadow it cast, and he did not fear it. That was his gift. Where others ran from the darkness, Mace studied it, not to use it, not to touch it, but to understand, to know its shape, its rhythm, its hunger, so that he could face it without falling. He became more than a warrior. He became the edge of the Jedi Order. He was discipline made flesh, focus given form. The Force often tests those it chooses. It whispers to the reckless. It offers visions to the lost. But to Mace Windu, it gave clarity, a rare kind, a dangerous kind. The kind that sees not only what is, but what must be done. He built Pad, a lightsaber form forged from the collision of shadow and light. It danced with danger, but never gave in. It invited darkness only to reflect it, not to absorb it. It was not a weapon of pride, but of protection. And in every motion, Mace stood in conversation with the Force, and the Force always listened. When he walked into the Chancellor's office for the final time, lightning already in the air, it was not rage he carried. It was resolution, because Mace Windu had seen the rot beneath the robes. He had looked into the still, smiling face of Darth Sidious and saw not a man, but a void, a silence that consumed truth, a power not born of strength, but of corrosion. The Force in that moment held its breath, for the path ahead forked in 3 directions: compromise, blindness, sacrifice, and Mace chose the third. He lifted his blade, violet like twilight, not in anger, but in finality. He did not desire to kill. He desired to end what should never have begun. He stood in judgment, not of a man, but of a movement, of a century of deception, pulled slowly, thread by thread, across the Republic's soul. But even clarity cannot stop fate, and fate came, not with fire, but with a broken heart. Anakin Skywalker, the child of prophecy, the trembling storm, the soul torn between fear and love, between destiny and doubt. His decision shattered the stillness, a shatter point, the very thing Mace Windu had spent a lifetime sensing. Those fragile cracks in the web of fate where one choice rewrites the galaxy. Anakin chose, and Mace fell. Through glass, through lightning, through wind and rain and silence. The Force did not catch him. It did not intervene. It simply watched, not out of cruelty, but out of reverence, for it understood what he carried with him in that fall, the weight of every life he had protected, the burden of every decision made in silence, the flame of every truth he upheld, even when no one listened. He did not scream. He did not beg. He let go, not of hope, but of control. He released himself into the current, into the waiting arms of the Force. The galaxy above would say he died that night. They would say the wind swallowed him, that the rain washed away his name. But the Force knows better. It knows that energy never dies. It bends, it weaves, it becomes memory, dream, echo. It becomes lesson. And so the echo of Mace Windu, his will, his silence, his blade, drifts still through the unseen spaces, through the temple ruins, through the thoughts of young Jedi who feel the need to walk a path with no name. He is still there, not gone, not forgotten, just waiting for the day the galaxy remembers what it truly means to be Jedi, not to fight, not to win, but to stand, to hold the center, to walk without fear, to face the storm with clarity, and never blink. And now, in this quiet night, this moment between stars and sleep, let that story remain with you. Drift through your thoughts like, what if the story did not end in fire? What if the fall from the window was not the end? The galaxy believes Mace Windu died that night, that he fell into the heart of the storm, broken and lost forever. The official record closed its pages. The temple was burned, the Jedi were scattered, and his name, once spoken with reverence, faded into silence. But perhaps the Force had other plans. Not all endings are truly endings. Some are beginnings, quiet ones, hidden ones, that grow like seeds beneath the soil. Imagine this. Far from Coruscant's lights, beyond the reach of probes, patrols, and politics, hidden deep in the outer rim, lies a forgotten world. It is not mapped. It is not charted. Its skies are quiet, its trees tall, its oceans deep and slow. There are no cities, no satellites. Just the sound of wind in the leaves, the rhythm of waves brushing stone, and stars that shine unbothered by war. And there, on a mountain overlooking the sea, stands a small dwelling, nothing more than stone walls, a fire pit, and a roof of woven branches. And in the soft golden glow of twilight, an old man sits by the fire. He wears no armor, no robes. His clothes are plain. His hands are weathered. His body bears the long story of pain, scars etched across his arms, across his chest, across his soul. And yet his eyes are sharp, his posture straight, his breath slow and even, like the world itself has taught him how to be still. This is Mace Windu, alive, changed, but awake. He did not die that night, not truly. The Force caught him, cradled him, carried him to safety, broken in body, but not in spirit. He awoke beneath a starlit sky, battered but breathing, and he understood. The galaxy had turned a page. There was no room left for a Jedi like him. Not yet. Not in a galaxy that had chosen fear. And so he did not seek revenge. He did not hunt the Sith. He did not scream into the void. He simply disappeared into the deep, into the silence, into a kind of exile no one imposed, but that he accepted all the same, because he knew the Jedi had failed, not just in war, but in understanding. They had lost their way, not from lack of courage, but from a lack of balance. And balance had always been Mace Windu's path. Even now, in solitude, he remains what he always was, a guardian, a silent sentinel, a watcher between light and shadow. Each morning, he rises with the sun and walks barefoot across the cliffs. He listens to the tide. He feels the pulse of the force in the wind, in the birdsong, in the stillness of a world untouched by battle. He meditates beneath a lone tree, carved into the rock by years of wind and time. And in his mind he speaks, not to others, but to the force itself, as one would speak to an old friend. He reflects on the years of war, on the council's decisions, on the boy named Anakin Skywalker, who could not escape the storm within. He does not speak in blame. He does not linger in anger. He simply seeks to understand. And sometimes, on clear nights, he watches the stars move slowly across the black sky. He sees flashes of ships above the horizon, Imperial shuttles, rebel transports, wanderers crossing the edge of known space. He does not interfere, but he watches, and he remembers. He remembers what it meant to stand in front of darkness and not flinch, what it meant to say no when others said wait, what it meant to be the last one standing, calm, resolved, clear. The galaxy may have forgotten him, but he has not forgotten it, and he knows, if the time ever comes, if one day someone comes seeking a truth deeper than power, a path older than fear, a voice that speaks not from above, but from within, he will be ready. Because Mace Windu was never about glory. He was not made of politics or prophecy. He was made of something quieter, something deeper. Clarity, stillness, conviction. These things do not burn, they do not rot, they do not fade. They simply wait. And so the fire beside him crackles gently in the night. The waves rise and fall like breath. The stars shine on. The forest moves like a quiet river around him. He does not speak. He does not move. He is simply present. And somewhere beyond the stars the galaxy turns, slowly, silently, healing, waiting. And in that same stillness, you are safe too. The story is done for now. The voices have softened. The shadows have passed. You may rest. Breathe deeply, let go. The force is with you and always will be. Good night.